and gentlemen. I have seen a comment in the chat box, a correction by Mr. Ogundipe, indicating that some of our members did not stand for the national anthem, and I must plead guilty to the same charge. I thought sitting erect was sufficient, but apparently the proper protocol is for all of us to be standing when the national anthem is recited. So we have taken this correction on board, Mr. Ogundipe. Thank you very much. And from the next session, we will be announcing the requirement for all participants, all members to be upstanding during the recital of the national anthems. So thank you very much for your correction. So welcome again, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to this morning's seminar event. I should like to introduce to you the members of the board of the Chamber of Commerce here present. And I have seen that we have with us today Mr. Shogunle, Demola Shogunle, CEO at Stanbic, who is also a member of the board of the chamber. We have Omasan Ogisi, representing MTN on the board of the chamber. We have also, I think I saw Dr. Judema, who is a member of the board, and also Mrs. Bola Tito Ajibode, who also represents Stanbic IBTC. Also with us today is His Excellency Daki Afcta, Consul General of the Republic of South Africa to Nigeria, situated in Lagos. You're welcome, sir. And of course, last but not least, is our indefatigable chairman, Mr. Osayaba Giwa Osage, the chairman of the chamber, and I'm also pleased to be here as the vice chair of the chamber. In addition, we are joined by some very distinguished personalities from Stanbic IBTC, who, as I've said earlier, are our hosts for today. And so we have with us today Mr. Funsho Akere, who is the CEO of Stanbic IBTC Capital. We also have Mr. Jesuseun Fatoyinbo, who is the head of trade and transactional products and services at Stanbic IBTC. Mr. Fatoyinbo will be our guest speaker for the day. And we also have Mr. Muyiwa Oni, who is the head research Stanbic IBTC. And with your permission, I should like to provide you with a little bit of background into the profiles of our guests and panelists. I should start in no particular order with Mr. Funsho Akere, who is the CEO of Stanbic IBTC Capital. Stanbic IBTC Capital, as we know, is the investment banking subsidiary of Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC, which is itself a member of the Standard Bank Group. He is also an executive of the Standard Bank Group and a member of the Investment Banking Africa Regions Management Committee. Funsho Akere joined Stanbic in 2000 and has executed over 50 complex capital raisings and innovative M&A transactions, privatizations over the decade that followed. He has served as the head of the equity capital markets between 2005 and 2008, and the head of debt capital markets between 2009 and 2010. He was seconded to Standard Bank South Africa in 2010 and worked as an executive in the Africa Corporate Finance team. Funsho returned to Stanbic IBTC Capital in April 2015 as head of corporate finance and was appointed acting CEO and head of investment banking in June 2015 and chief executive in November 2015. Funsho serves on the Securities and Exchange Commission Technical Committee on attracting new listings. And his CV goes on and on to indicate a very distinguished personality. We're very pleased to have you, Funsho Akere. I'm pleased to also say that I know Funsho quite well. He's always been a professional, a resounding gentleman, and someone I'm pleased to have here with us this morning. I should also like to read out Mrs. Ajibode's profile, at least a short introduction to her. I'll make it shorter than Funsho's. So Bola Ajibode is an experienced corporate banker with over 3 decades under her belt across 3 banks. She has managed diversified portfolios, including general commerce, manufacturing, oil and gas, and telecoms. She joined Chartered Bank in 2004 as head of the oil and gas division and is the current head of conglomerates and industrials at Stanbic IBTC Bank. She has deep knowledge in business development across business segments and has been instrumental to originating and executing several multi-million-dollar transactions. You will observe I have not read out the profile of our guest speaker. I shall be doing so at the point when he will be asked to come and give the speech for the day. In addition, finally, we have with us this morning the CEO of the Chamber, the Executive Secretary, Mr. Ike Ejimofo, who technically is the one that brings us all together this morning. So at this point, I should like to hand over to the chairman of the Nigeria-South Africa Chamber of Commerce to provide us with his opening remarks.
Good morning, distinguished members of the Nigerian-South African Chamber of Commerce present at this webinar session, our guest speakers and our panelists. And I also wish to welcome especially Mr. Daki Africa, Counsel General of South African Republic of South African High Commission in Nigeria, and Mr. Demola Shogule, the CEO of Stanbic IBTC. I'm sure that you all agree with me that the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is a welcome development to the continent. The AfCFTA grants access to a market of about 1.2 billion people, the biggest market in the world, and aims to foster trade and investment in Africa. Currently, all the countries in Africa except Eritrea have signed the AfCFTA. So we can boldly say that the AfCFTA is here to stay. What are the benefits of the AfCFTA? How can it help to improve the Nigerian GDP? These are some of the pressing questions that have trailed the signing of the agreement by Nigeria. And I'm sure our guest speaker and panelists will provide some answers in the course of their presentations and discussions. While intra-Africa trade, which is rated at 15 to 17% is very low, the AfCFTA is estimated by the United Nations Economic Commission to boost intra-Africa trade by 52%. The agreement also addresses the movement of persons and labor, competition, investment, and intellectual property. Some of the general objectives of the AfCFTA are to create a single market for goods, services, facilitated by movement of persons. B, create a liberalized market for goods and services. C, contribute to the movement of capital and natural persons and facilitate investment building. Some of the vehicles to obtain these objectives are elimination of tariffs and non-tariff barriers to trades in goods, cooperation in trade-related areas, cooperation on customs matters, and establishment of a mechanism for settlement of disputes. There are certain challenges to implementation of the AfCFTA, which include lack of infrastructure, political instability, and lack of economic diversification. Nigeria, for example, trades majorly on petroleum. The country would therefore need to diversify to other products to benefit immensely from the agreement. Another fundamental issue that will enable Nigeria to harness the gains of the agreement is the issue of free movement of people. Given the importance of free movement of people to creating an industrialized Africa, it is not surprising that many organizations are advocating for a free visa Africa. And the African Union in particular is pursuing the agenda of a single African passport. It is also satisfying to know that Nigeria is championing the call for ratification of the AfCFTA protocol on free movement of people. I'm of the opinion that while the implementation of the AfCFTA agreement will help to boost the Nigerian economy, Its impact will be limited if there are no free trade movement of investors, workers, families, and other Africans. I thank you all for listening and look forward to an interesting discussion by our guest speaker and also our panelists. I also thank our sponsors, Stanbic IBTC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We will now be going into the actual event of the day, and I would like to announce the protocols that we will be following, because we've got a guest speaker and then we've got a couple of panelists. So the order of protocols will be for the guest speaker to deliver his speech, and after his presentation, the panelists will have a couple of minutes to, if you like, to expand on any aspects of the presentation that they would like to focus on, and we'll give them some time for that. Whilst this is going on, the chat box is open, and participants who would like to post questions or comments are welcome to post those comments in the chat box or to ask questions in the questions box. At the end of the speech and the panelist session, we will direct the questions and read out the questions we have received and direct them to the person indicated. So when you are asking a question, please be good enough to indicate who you are addressing the question to, whether to the speaker or to either of the panelists. At this point, I should like to read out to you the profile of our distinguished panelist, Mr. Jesuseun Fatoyinbo. Mr. Fatoyinbo is currently the head of Transactional Products and Services at Stanbic IBTC, a subsidiary of the group, which is a leading end-to-end financial services provider in Nigeria. Jesuseun has overall responsibility for the strategic direction, development, commercialization, and health of the institution of the traditional and non-traditional trade financing portfolios in the bank. He's got over 15 years experience in commercial banking, and he has gained practical experience through business building relationships with various stakeholders within the trade value chain. He has worked with small businesses, with large corporations, and with financial institutions to address their trade finance needs. Jesuseun has keen interest in facilitating discussions around trade finance and has been oftentimes sought after to speak on the subject. He holds a Master's of Business Administration degree from the University of Northampton and is a certified documentary credit specialist. He has also completed the executive program at the Graduate School of Business, University of Cape Town in South Africa, and the Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University in the US. So at this point, I should like to invite Jesuseun to take us through his presentation. Mr. Fatoyinbo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ajibola, and thank you very much also to the chair. I would like to project my slides, so I'll do that just now. I think the technical team needs to give me the right to share my slides. Okay.
Yeah, co-host, you can share, yes.
Okay, it's come up now. Thank you. Just to check that you can see my slides.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So good day, I should say again, and thanks again, Mr. Ajibola, for the introduction. And to the chair and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share my reflections and my thoughts with respect to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Before I proceed, I would like to request that you permit me to stand on existing protocol and recognize everyone present. I've been given 30 minutes or 30 odd minutes to share my reflection on a very topical issue. And I think the chairman has done a very good job in preluding this conversation. And it's a very topical issue because given the potential, given the benefits, given the challenges that we need to tackle clearly as a continent, it's a front burner issue, and some of those issues clearly have been discussed in the public space, either by technical players like myself, or either by banking partners like myself, or either by the organized private sector, be it the Chamber of Commerce's or the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria. So I hope that today's conversation would be an instructive and enriching one, and that it will be a valuable use of our time. 35 minutes is a short period of time to cover this topic, but I will focus on certain areas. So I've drawn up an agenda, or what I call an outline. I'll pretty much look at an overview of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and I'll use the acronym AfCFTA more regularly. After giving an overview of the agreement itself and what it seeks to achieve, I will highlight some of the objectives and the strategic imperative for it. Then look at the implementation plan, state of play, which would highlight, and I think the chairman has spoken to that a bit in terms of who has signed, who hasn't signed, what the ratification status is, how Nigeria's journey was into the ratification point. Then I'll have a view of Nigeria trade, providing a lens into the potential it represents and how we see it going into the future. Then I'll kind of move in deeply into the opportunities we see in terms of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area itself, highlight some of the challenges. I won't dwell so much on the challenges that are well documented and known. And I would share some thoughts on how this moves forward more on a broad or national level as against on a small base level. So in terms of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, I think a good place to start is to try to position what a free trade agreement is. And in its basic form, and if you will, a free trade agreement is an agreement between two or more countries where the countries agree to certain obligations that affect trade in goods and services. It also includes protections around investment, intellectual property rights, and in some instances, it also includes copyright issues. But at the heart of most trade agreements or free trade agreements is the elimination of some form of tariffs or trading norms, some concessions granted to parties within that agreement. And those who are familiar with the theory of economic integration, you would tell you that the creation of a free trade area is one of those first steps towards the evolution of, or towards an economic integration or creating an economic union, as it were. So in terms of looking at the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, it's positioned, or should I say situated within that context, a context where more than two nations have come together to agree to certain obligations, granting concessions or eliminating certain norms or certain tariffs to achieve a common goal. So having put that in mind, it will be important to highlight that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area itself is a historic agreement. And I think the chairman spoke about that quite briefly. It's historic in the sense that it has a potential to completely transform the economic and social profile of the continent. And when we look at the strategic imperative and the potential it holds, we believe that when it's fully implemented, it will be, one, the largest free trade zone in the world, purely going by the size of the continent, geographical spread of the continent on one side, the population on the continent on the other side. And it clearly provides the biggest business opportunity in the continent's history. So in terms of the size, the scale, the historic nature, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is one of its kind. And it's important to stress this point because as a banking franchise, we engage clients on the corporate side, clients on the financial institution side. And what we are seeing and what we're hearing, not just from large local institutions, small, medium businesses, but more importantly from global investors, global institutions, they are looking at an idea that this is a large and integrated market, a market where if you have a plug-in, you have access to a geographical spread across 55 countries, or 54 now because 54 have signed, members of the agreement. But more importantly, you have access to a population of 1.2 billion people. So looking at that itself creates the appetite, creates the interest, creates the excitement for the opportunity. And while those of us on ground might be close to the issues and possibly see it less, those who are outside are looking more importantly at the integrated market. 1, 2, we're hearing them talk about how that would translate to lower cost of doing business. So if you have to engage, you don't have to engage with 54 countries. You can actually engage with one continent, because the tariff regimes, the concessions are consistent across board. More importantly, they are looking at efficient border and custom management processes because, and I'll get to that in my next slide, which talks to one of the key things AfCFTA seeks to achieve, which is to dismantle, to remove what we call non-tariff barriers. So tariff barriers will be removed, which is the custom charges and what have you. But more importantly, the port inefficiencies, which translate to delays, which translates to cost and the cost of doing business, would be eliminated. And ultimately, there's the view, and we'll talk to that when we get down the line, around how we see from the European Union or from other intra-regional trade blocs, how forming those blocs became the bedrock for their infrastructural development and their industrialization. So from an investor standpoint, the idea of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area represents a very attractive proposition, both as an investment destination and a destination to grow even their own market share. The agreement in terms of certain specifics was signed in 2018, early 2018, March precisely, and it focuses on stimulating growth, which I've kind of spoken to, creating employment, and more importantly, diversifying the economies across the continent. It's a market size of 1.2 billion people and a combined GDP in excess of $3 billion, or 3.4, depending on what exchange rates you're using across the markets, but over $3 trillion, sorry. In terms of objective, I think I've highlighted 4 of the objectives here. And I think, as I noted earlier on, we talk about free trade areas within the context of countries coming together to agree to certain obligations and concessions. But in that regard, it represents one of the first steps towards or moving towards a customs union. So at the heart of creating the free trade area called Afcta is the foundational building blocks that are being laid towards a continental customs union. And the goal here, because ultimately, is to have a single custom or external tariff for the continent, such that each member state on the continent will have the same custom tariff, irrespective of the member state that an external party is trading with on one side, or more importantly, irrespective of the goods you are buying from one member state to another member state. And I'll speak a little bit more around that because there are slight exceptions in terms of the consistency of tariffs across the countries, where certain items might be on an exclusion list and might differ from country to country. But in laying the foundation, it's laying the foundation to create an equivalent, even though it's going to be a bigger market, than an equivalent of the European Union as we have it today. Secondly, one of the key objectives or strategic imperative is to enhance the competitiveness of economies of state parties, which are African countries, within the continent and global market. And I think the key point here, or my key reflection here, is that the reality today, and when I talk to corporates or even FIs who do business on the continent, the reality today there's an extensive fragmentation of the markets and the economies. So, and that in itself translates to having to deal with each country, each market on a one-on-one basis. And in doing that, there's that challenge of cost. There's the cost of the interaction, there's the cost of the negotiation. You have agreements that has to be signed by each country or each member state, as it were, Africa Union member state currently, as it were. And that translates to the cost of doing business. So the competitiveness to say that at the end of the day, if I have to come into the market and I have to set up in the market and I have to get my base in a particular country, but want to distribute across the market, it becomes a challenge because I almost have to negotiate per country. The idea of Afta is to remove most of those, what we call non-tariff barriers, and improve the attractiveness or the competitiveness of the continent, as it were, such that you can set up in any area, in any location on the continent, and still have access to the wider continent, the market of 1.2 billion people. Also, in that regard, it's important to highlight that it's not just about intra-Africa trade. In other words, it definitely improves the competitiveness of us doing businesses with ourselves. So today, and the best example I often use is the example of flying within Africa or West Africa. If you're flying certain West African countries, and this is even prior to COVID now, COVID clearly has exacerbated things, but even prior to COVID, if you're flying across to certain West African countries, you either have to wait for certain days of the week to fly there, and oftentimes it's faster for you to fly out to Europe and come back to that country. So the ability to move freely in terms of humans is the first level of it, but more importantly, see how that translates when you're now moving goods in terms of the road network, in terms of the lack of infrastructure around rail transport, which creates their own inhibitions. So the idea is after the infrastructural development would come, but more importantly, we can trade amongst ourselves. Beyond that becomes the ability to make us more competitive trading with the world. And I would show a slide down the line around who our major trading partners are as a country, Nigeria, but it's pretty much indicative of also Africa, where China remains our largest trading partner today. And we do more with China than we do amongst ourselves. So in terms of an objective, Afta clearly looks to enhance our competitiveness, either in terms of trading amongst ourselves, but more importantly, trading with the world or global partners. The third point highlights or talks to building or promoting sustainable and inclusive social economic development, gender equality, and structural transformation of the state parties. And I think the key takeaway here, or the key point here, the way I reflect on this is that the more we do business with ourselves, the more we enable prosperity on the continent, particularly among certain social groups. And specifically here would be women, because within the agreement, there's recently introduced the protocol on women, youth, and SMEs. So my reflection in this regard is to say that, and it's what we can all relate to, that people who trade amongst themselves create wealth within themselves and keep that wealth or that prosperity within themselves. So the goal ultimately, from an Afta standpoint, is to have the demands or the requirements for goods and services on the continent being met by manufacturing or skills that are on the continent. So the competitiveness on one side, but here it's around where we can access markets, either for manufacturing requirements, for skills, for talent, to build, to grow, to develop the continent. And by such doing, we are clearly moving up the value chain on one side. We are investing in the infrastructure that makes us grow. And more importantly, we are supporting local industries and local people to create prosperity at home. And from an objective standpoint, the last one talks to promoting industrial development through diversification and regional value chain development and agricultural development, etc. And I look at this more within the broader industrialization conversation. And the objective here is to say that Afta would accelerate, would catalyze Africa's industrial agenda. So without a doubt, within the trade circles or within the trade corridors, we talk about how trade is critical or fundamental to economic growth and development. But so is infrastructure. I actually believe it's the bedrock of economic development. Access to the right transport system, road networks, technology, efficient movement or port systems clearly cuts down time, cuts down costs, and ultimately improves the overall experience. So with Afta, there is that opportunity for the industrial investment or the infrastructural investment to come on the continent. People set up plants, people set up factories, governments invest on rail networks, road networks, airport systems as a requirement to continue to, one, grow their share of export, but more importantly, grow their GDP or as a country. So I think while Afta, at the heart of it, drives for trade and investment, both trade in goods and trade in services and investment, I think it would accelerate the industrialization of the continent. And those kind of speak to the key or 4 key objectives of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Moving forward, I would reflect a bit on the implementation plan and highlight that Afta is not a big bang, or the approach to Afta is not a big bang approach, or it's not a big bang affair. And again, I think most times that's where there is a disconnect. There's a view that we want to begin to see the benefits immediately. The conversation has been on since 2018. Nigeria eventually signed. Subsequent to that, trade was meant to commence last year, June. Because of COVID, it was moved forward to January this year. Since January this year to now, there's really nothing that has happened. So there's a sense that things have been slow, there's been a lot of talk, but there's been little action, as it were. And that's why this is important, because the whole idea of the Continental Agreement for Africa is not to have a big bang. In fact, it's a 2063 agenda. It's meant to coincide or commemorate the 100 years of the African Union or the OAU, as it were. So it's not a plan or a program or an initiative that will begin to see the rewards or the benefits immediately. But the building blocks, the foundation that would deliver a sustainable experience, a sustainable growth for the individual countries and the continent are what are being laid now. So in terms of the agreement, there are a couple of phases that have been defined to cover certain protocols within the agreement. And the first phase looks at 3 protocols. That's the protocol on dispute resolution, protocol on trade in goods, and protocol on trade in services. Now, the protocol on dispute resolution was quite negotiated quickly or swiftly, I would say. And in itself, it provides only for interstate disputes, which kind of aligns with the WTO approach, where it's only state-to-state disputes or states that can actually bring disputes for resolution. In that regard, if a private individual in one state does have a dispute or has a concern that he needs to bring forward, he would have to go through the state authority, be it the federal government or as Nigeria, as it were, as against having to represent him or herself individually or the company, the private entity, individually at the dispute resolution. Currently, negotiations are ongoing with respect to the trade in, or the protocol on trade in goods and trade in services, and specifically the rules of origin and the schedule of tariff concessions are being negotiated. There are a lot of discussions around that. And that's important because without the rules of origin and the schedule of tariffs, we can't begin to trade in goods because we need to know what qualifies as an item or as a product manufactured within Africa and meets the Afta standards in terms of the benchmark. or what items are going to come into my country duty-free or to a country duty-free, or what items would be charged the normal duty because it sits on a particular list. And I'll speak to that just now. So the conversations around, or negotiations around trade in goods and trade in services are ongoing and hopefully should be concluded soon. We're actually due for completion by June, but things, again, COVID itself kind of delayed a couple of things and things have moved out, or there's been a knock-on effect in that regard. Then phase 2 covers, as highlighted here, you can see the protocol on investment, protocol on competition policy, and protocol on intellectual property rights. Then we do have phase 3, which covers e-commerce, and e-commerce came subsequently to the agenda, and it's been put as part of phase 3, but the idea is that it will run parallel, or the negotiations we did around it will run parallel with phase 2 negotiations. But at this point, negotiations haven't begun with respect to phase 3. So as I said earlier on, I talked about the rules of origin not yet finalized, or the schedule of tariffs still undergoing negotiation. And why that is important is, specifically in terms of the schedule of tariffs, is that at the heart of intra-Africa trade, or Afta as it were, is the need to boost trade in the corridor through progressive elimination of tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So the aim is to look at, and if you look at the right side of my screen, the aim is to look at liberalizing products over a period, or progressively over a period of time. And these products have been kind of categorized or designated into certain categories. So you do have the first list of products, which is the first one on the top, which is the non-sensitive products. And these are items that are considered, well, in terms of the benchmark, 90% of the tariff line. And I guess it's important to clarify this. It's 90% of tariff line. So we have what we call the harmonized system classification of goods used in international trade, which we broadly refer to as HS code in Nigeria. So 90% of line items on the HS code book, or the HS code schedule, are meant to be form non-sensitive products and are meant to be liberalized progressively within a 5-year window. So this is not 90% of trade, but 90% of line items or tariff items. The second category are the sensitive products. And these products are put in a bucket of 7%, to say that 7% of tariff lines would fall within this bucket, and they will be liberalized, or tariffs of them will be reduced over a period of 10 years. However, we have the third category, which is the lower part here, which talks to the exclusion list. And this is 3% of tariffs, which may never be liberalized. In other words, may be excluded from liberalization. And the idea here is to say that each country could have reasons, and the guidelines or the articles of the agreement clearly outline considerations that you need to walk through, or as a country, to determine whether an item is sensitive and or on the exclusion list. And they are around things, national security, food security, fiscal revenue. Because, truth be told, a country that a significant portion of its government revenue is derived from custom taxes or duties, clearly would have to relook the approach to say that what is the immediate impact and how do I sustain my revenues going into the future. So there's a window to allow for 3% of line items to be on the exclusion list, which means that these items will be excluded from liberalization. They will not be liberalized from a tariff standpoint. So talking about the state of play, we currently have 54 countries that have signed. The chairman spoke about that in his remarks. Only Eritrea hasn't signed, while currently 40 member states have ratified the agreement. So you can see 40 member states have ratified, but we do have 38 states. If you look at towards my left, you have 38 states or countries, as it were, that have deposited their instrument of ratification with the depository, which is the chair of the African Union. So the other two have not done, even though they have ratified, they haven't deposited their instrument of ratification at the Secretariat. When they do that, then that number moves to 40. I guess an interesting point to highlight, since the forum is Nigeria and South Africa Chamber of Commerce, is the fact that Nigeria and South Africa were noticeably, should I say, absent, or did not, were two major countries on the continent that did not sign off to the agreement at the sign-off ceremony in Rwanda in 2018. And clearly there were domestic pressures to have further stakeholder engagement, stakeholder considerations before that that signing took place, which the good news, however, is that both countries subsequently went on to sign, and Nigeria did sign the agreement just ahead of the extraordinary session of the AU in 2019, July precisely 2019. And subsequent to that, the Federal Executive Council approved the ratification of the agreement. And in December last year, December 5 precisely, Nigeria did deposit its instrument of ratification at the AU Secretariat in Addis Ababa. I guess a key point to also highlight, and if I'm just trying to highlight the point around the between the red and amber coloring on the barometer, is that for the agreement to have come into force, the agreement required 22 countries to sign on and ratify the agreement. And that was achieved in 2018. And subsequent to that, the ratification of the agreement came into force, as it were, on the back of the number of countries, 22 at the time. But at the point of ratification, it was 24 because it allowed for a 30-day dispensation. In other words, 30 days after the 22nd country ratifies, then the agreement comes into force. So I echo the comments of the chairman around that it has come to stay. You know, this is a moving train. There's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of interest, and we'll talk about momentum down the line, but there's a lot of interest, excitement around this. And I think it holds significant promise and will deliver in that regard for the continent. So going into trade specifically, and I suppose it's important to highlight this because the agreement talks about trade in goods, trade in services. We talk about how trade drives economic growth, and more importantly, we talk about how trade represents the vehicle for which investment comes in and for which prosperity is democratized, as it were, either on a small to medium scale basis, where a small company in Nigeria is manufacturing, buying local leathers to manufacture shoes to sell to local people in the community or in the country, or takes it on a larger scale to sell across the border. People are employed, social economic benefits are derived to the people, government tax are paid, prosperity is derived ultimately for the country. So I thought to highlight this to show that despite the challenges of last year, we can see, and this is a 5-year view, we can see that trade has grown 15% at a 15% 5-year CAGR rate. And this is despite the double-digit decline in 2020. And clearly we all know the events of last year, COVID on one side, but more importantly, the impact of the oil price war and how that depressed oil prices also. And the second point here is, and why trade becomes relevant or critical, is the fact that recently, I think earlier this month, the Q2 numbers from a GDP standpoint were released. And it showed that trade was a strong driver of that growth. Yeah, so we grew year on year 5%, yes, from a low base, understood, but trade contributed significantly or strongly to that. The numbers show that trade grew by 22 thereabout %. So it's important to highlight this because not only is it an important sector, it's also an important contributor to GDP. The second slide I'm highlighting here is to give you a sense of who our trading partners are and who they have been over the years, over the 5-year period. And as you can see here, the first bar represents Africa. We've kind of studied, and this is Nigeria trade numbers. Who is Nigeria trading with? Who are we buying from? Who are we selling to? And this is both import and export. So from a cross-border standpoint, we've kind of flattened out, or we've averaged out at 9%. But if you look at the second to the last bar, and the last bar is very small, which is Oceania. But if you look at the second to the last bar, it highlights, oh, sorry, third to the last bar, which is like the middle bar, it highlights Asia. Now, within that block, you've seen a steady growth from 33% to 44% over that 5-year window. And the biggest driver of that growth is China, or trade with China. So it's important to highlight that even though trade has grown at a 15% 5-year CAGR rate, the underlying driver of that growth is trade with China, which has progressively grown over that 5-year window. While our trade with other countries on the continent has kind of remained flat, or continues to remain flat at 9%. It went up in 2019 to 14, but kind of came down to 9% last year. But the good news here is this, that the fact that we're doing so little today from a intra-Africa or trading with Africa standpoint provides the opportunity for us to change the narrative, to say that there's a lot of headroom, there's a lot of window, there's a lot of runway to do more with the continent. And with Afta, I think that provides the impetus or the platform to enable that opportunity. This last slide kind of gives a deep dive into the 2020 numbers. And I guess I'll just focus on the trade with Africa, which is the map towards map number four, towards the bottom part of the slide. And the key takeaway here is that last year we did have a positive balance of payment with other African countries. Sorry, Mr. Ajibola, I see your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Jesuseun, just to ask you to begin to wind down so the panelists, so you don't use up all the panelists' time.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, so I guess the key takeaway here is that balance of payment is positive in trading with other African countries, and clearly that's one to watch in terms of how we go into the future, because as a big market, there will definitely, with the removal of tariffs, there will definitely be an appetite to come into the market, and that will result in competition, but that's one to watch. I'll go quickly talking about opportunities, and I think the key point here is to highlight that intra-Africa trade remains 17%, the best estimate of it. If you look at other trade intra-regional trading blocks, be it the European Union, you're at 64%, be it US, Mexico, and Canada arrangement at 50%. It tells us that there is that opportunity when we begin to trade with ourselves to grow the share of intra-Africa trade from the low 17% we are today to a higher level. And the chairman highlighted that point earlier in his remarks, talking about where UNECA had estimated that intra-Africa trade would boost, or Afta would boost intra-Africa trade by 52%. In other words, from 17%, it will boost it over a 2-year period by 52%. And over a 20-year period, it would actually grow the corridor will grow from 17% to 25%. And that's a conservative estimate. In terms of opportunity also, it's important to highlight that these are areas, and we look at this data not just based on the historical, but it's also true because it's the trend we saw with COVID. This highlights areas of opportunities for African or Nigerian manufacturers. So we can see from this data that retail expenditure grew by 42% over 5 years for these consumer products, beverages, food, tobacco, clothing, and footwear, significantly driving the numbers. So the thinking here is to say that many African countries are low-income countries, and in terms of manufacturing capacity, they are often worse than Nigeria. Yeah, there are some that are better, but most are worse than Nigeria. So they import a lot. They can't produce what they require, so they import a lot, and that creates an opportunity. And because they are low-income economies, they're also not importing premium brands. So oftentimes we talk about Nigerian exports not good enough for Europe, not good enough for America, but they are good enough for other African countries because they are not going after premium brands. So that's one opportunity. So the quality of the products we manufacture in this market that are good for Nigerian market become attractive in those other African markets, which is an opportunity. So we can compete and achieve market penetration as Nigerian manufacturers looking into other markets. In addition to that, most of these markets have favorable demographics, either in terms of the population, young population. Most of these countries, 75% of the population are under 25 years, and that's an attractive consumer base also. So I believe that there's huge potential for Nigerian manufacturers on the continent. Several items that most African countries are procuring can be gotten from Nigeria, manufactured in Nigeria, and we can compete in those markets. And more importantly, because the non-tariff barriers and the tariff barriers are removed, then we can actually go in at very competitive pricing. Yes, there are other challenges to consider anyways. So I've reflected here on the short-term and long-term impact. I've kind of spoken to a couple of these, so I'll flip this. I've highlighted here specific benefits for importers, exporters in terms of importing duty-free, reduces your costs, opportunity to generate foreign currency. So if you're an importer, you can actually then sell your finished products to other African countries, earn foreign currency, and use that as an advantage to get FX at a relatively competitive and, should I say, yeah, competitive rate. We all know what's happening in the Nigerian market today from an FX liquidity standpoint, but this provides an opportunity for you to play on both sides and improve your liquidity for your import business. On the exporting side, he also talks to duty, concessions, more importantly, opportunity to grow your market share beyond the shores of Nigeria, and overall increase in your turnover as a business and profitability. Challenges, I won't dwell so much on this. They are well documented, and I'll leave us to reflect on this. But in conclusion, I think the key point or the key takeaway I want to end with is that, yes, momentum was significant when the agreement was ratified. We think COVID came in. A lot of countries began to reflect on the impact of losing government revenue attributable from tariffs. So there's a risk of momentum slowing down. We think that given the need for economic recovery, given the slowdown in globalization, that there's a need for acceleration. That momentum needs to continue. And your platform, your organization clearly represents an important stakeholder group to drive that agenda or drive that conversation forward. Clarity also becomes important around rules of origin, tariff schedules, understanding what opportunities exist in terms of goods I can import, tariffs I can take advantage of. And finally would be around creating a more digital trade environment. A lot of what we do from a trade standpoint today is paper-based, physical-based. Efficiency is derived, opportunity to digitize and create efficiency clearly will be delivered through this process. And given your platform, we believe that it's something an agenda you can drive. So I thank you very much for your attentiveness, and I will yield the floor back to you, Mr. Ajibola. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been an very interesting presentation. You would have noticed that I've been taking very copious notes, and I hope you don't mind. But there have been so many gems in what you have shared with us and so many takeaways. For example, the fact that nascent small, medium-scale enterprises don't have to worry so much about whether they can compete in Europe or compete in the USA or Asian markets. They can use Africa as a staging board because the standards, the market demands in African countries are not as keen or as sharp or as high as you might find in Asia or Europe or the Americas. And that's a very, very important point because a lot of Nigerian SMEs are worried about being dominated, being taken over, having the Nigerian market taken over by European entrants coming in through West Africa or coming in through Africa. But you are telling us that this market is actually staged for Nigerian entrepreneurs to actually branch out and, in a sense, dominate. And I think that's really, really encouraging. I know that the other panelists, Mrs. Ajibode and Mr. Oni, would also have some very interesting takes on this subject matter. I should like to give the floor to Mr. Oni first because Mrs. Ajibode is one of our own, and so I'd like her to speak last. So, Mr. Oni, would like your thoughts, please. Muyiwa Oni.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ajibola, and thank you, Jesuseun, for the detailed presentation. I think just 3 key points for me as a follow-up on Jesuseun's presentation. I think one key area to highlight on the Afta priority is that for now, the focus seems to be on services. And I think part of the reasons why as well is that I think there's that acknowledgement that from an Africa perspective, and Jesuseun made that point, that manufacturing capacity is still low. And so areas that the Afta is seen as priority for now is business services, for example, communication services, financial services, tourism and travel-related services and transport services. I think that explains why, if you look at things from a Nigerian perspective, for example, you're seeing stronger penetration for Nigerian banks into other countries within the continent. I think that where an institution like Standard Bank shows its strength as well, in the sense that we are very well present in most of the dominant markets on the continent. And so from a priority standpoint, services still seems to be the area. And I think also if one looks at that low manufacturing capacity position in Africa, and to the point that Jesuseun talked about with, for now, the continent still is low income, and so the services and products are to a reasonable extent low income as well. So there's that potential to increase and upscale that manufacturing capacity to take advantage of this export opportunity from that perspective. And so partnering with countries with better capacity does help from that point. And then lastly, from me, I think if you look at evolution as well of a few products. So in Africa for now, the focus seems to be more commodity based from an export perspective. But once we start improving our capacity, then we go beyond that. So a good example is cement. From a Nigerian perspective, 10 years ago, we were import dependent. Now we have excess capacity and more position to export, and have been exporting. And in recent times as well, areas like fertilizer, you've seen increased capacity expansion in that light, and there's that potential to export fertilizer. And then lastly, petroleum product refining capacity as well. With the Dangote refinery, with BUA also trying to go into that area, there's clearly that move to position Nigeria to take advantage of this export capacity more. So I'll pause now and yield the floor back to Mr. Ajibola.
Thank you so much for that. So you reinforce the message as to how Nigeria can leverage the Afca and take goods and services out into the African market. And you're right, when you look at the capacity of some of the investments done by conglomerates like the Dangote Group, their refining capacity is much larger than Nigeria's domestic requirements. So clearly, there's a play there for the West African, if not the African market. I'd like to invite the CEO of Stanbic IBTC Capital, Mr. Akere, Funsho Akere, to give his own panelist remarks. Funsho? Okay, while Funsho gets ready, I wonder if Mrs. Ajibode, Funsho, are you ready for us?
I am.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe, thanks. I think my colleagues have covered a couple of the important points. I think maybe what I would just add is that, if you're operating in Nigeria, you've got to kind of ask yourselves a few strategic questions in view of what we expect to happen. You have to start to ask yourselves, how competitive are your products and services relative to similar companies in other African markets? And you can analyze this across 3 dimensions. You look at your production cost, you look at price, you look at quality.
I think on things like your production cost, if your cost of production is significantly higher than Rwanda or even neighboring markets like Ghana, etc., then you have to take a critical look at your manufacturing or production process and try to figure out whether certain aspects should be produced in another country to bring down your cost of production. Otherwise, what you will find is that you are no longer competing based on land borders, right? You're competing, I think it was Jesuseun who mentioned that they're looking to reduce for 97% of goods, the plan is to remove cross-border tariffs, dismantle non-tariff barriers, and more importantly, fix transport infrastructure. So right now you're competing not only based on land borders, you'll be competing with companies in Rwanda, South Africa, Kenya, etc. So I think that that's important. The second is pricing, and I'm first an economist before a banker. So I always go to the basic principles of supply and demand, which imply that where you have increased supply because of borderless competition, then you're going to see pressure on prices, which then impacts your margins, which takes me to the second point. If you're a corporate operating in Nigeria, at the end of the day, you've got to, deliver increased earnings to your stakeholders. Otherwise, you expect your share price to go down. So you have to think now about growth. How do I build value? How do I, form strategic partnerships outside of Nigeria? Do I really need to go and set up operation in other countries where the cost of labor is cheaper or the cost of power is cheaper? You no longer can think of your business as, I'm a Nigerian company operating entirely in Nigeria, but as a Nigerian multinational, that's, you're a Nigerian company, but you may have operations in different markets that allow you to increase shareholder value. And those are, some of the things that, those are some of the conversations we're having with our clients. For example, should you go and buy businesses in South Africa that allow you reduce your cost of production or allow you target a different market? Should you be looking at, Standard Bank is in 22 African countries, so we can handhold any business in Nigeria and give you real insight into what opportunities exist, because it shouldn't be only one way. It shouldn't be companies coming to eat our lunch in Nigeria. We should also be going out to other African countries and seeing, how do we take advantage of this laudable initiative. Yeah, so I think, I will probably stop there. I would end with saying, you've got to think about, maybe strategic partnerships. Can you start to have distribution agreements? You've got to think about, where can you, reducing your cost of production, where can you get, are there certain aspects of your production process that can be either outsourced or to another country, or actually building factories in other African markets? And you've got to think about strategic M&A. Do I need to go and buy businesses in other African countries so that I can, where I think I have a competitive advantage and there's a pricing or a margin benefit, I can get the benefit of that and increase shareholder value. So I'll stop there.
Well, before I allow you to stop, Funsho, just listening to you, my mind gets engaged so quickly, and I'm thinking of challenging some of your theses. And one that comes to mind immediately is that you've opened my mind to the factor of competition by giving opportunity to lowering costs, leveraging low-cost production centers that may exist outside of, say, for example, Nigeria or Ghana. But then how do you think Nigeria stands where that's concerned? Because the cost of labor in Nigeria is particularly high relative to the rest of Africa. And Nigerian manufacturing sector tends to be highly unionized, which also is a limitation as a factor of production. So, do you think we'll have to make changes where that's concerned? And do you see some manufacturing components being exported away from Nigeria on account of our high cost of labor?
Yeah, so I think the short answer is yes, but I find that, again, Nigerians, we're very industrious. So when faced with complete collapse of manufacturing locally, there will be people will look inwards and will probably actually have to be more efficient. So the solution really is then just efficiency and trying to drive down the cost of production. You would have to take hard conversations or hard decisions rather. But there's no way, if you're uncompetitive from a cost perspective, you either shut down your factories and lay off workers, or you have a real conversation around efficiency. Can I leverage technology, for example? Do I need 300 workers in a particular factory, or can I reduce that to 50 and leverage technology? Can I take the balance of 250 and take them to areas where countries that require more people and export those individuals to maybe neighboring countries like Ghana, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, where actually the cost of things like power and infrastructure are cheaper. So it doesn't matter that, and because of the currency, it doesn't matter that you don't have to reduce their wages, but that proportion of the overall production cost doesn't make you uncompetitive. But really, you have to make hard decisions. Otherwise, you'd have people running out of business.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then you have countries like Morocco and Israel who are looking to join the Africa Union for the singular purpose of benefiting also from the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And you know what happens if Morocco and Israel, with their huge manufacturing capacity, were to be able to join the EU and benefit therefrom. I think the stage is set for us to hear from Mrs. Ajibode. Mrs. Ajibode. Bola Ajibode, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would like to stand on the existing protocol. I want to believe that my fellow panelists and the speaker has made very good contribution today, and they have kind of galvanized us, I believe, into action. Nigeria is here to take advantage of what African Continental Free Trade Zone Agreement has put before us. And as we dive into the panel discussion, I would like to highlight the fact that a number of corporates in Nigeria have been taking advantage of the intra-African trade. We all know that within the West African corridor, a number of corporates, whether large corporates, medium size, small size, trading within the African corridor. And these guys today, I will call them winners. Permit me to address them as winners, because we are all faced with scarcity of foreign exchange now. And what we can see is that a number of these guys are now able to augment their FS allocation from CBN with their exports to domiciliary account balances. So these are winners. And like Funshaw says, Nigerians are very resilient. We have seen clients operating from Agbara during border closure. They had to move their goods from Agbara to Apapa and ship them to Ghana. I mean, imagine the stress of doing that. But they did not see the difficulties. All they saw was the possibilities. And today they have, FX to their advantage. So I would say that Nigeria, this AfCFTA is just what we need. It has been the missing puzzle for us in Africa. I mean, coming home, Nigeria is still highly import dependent. And I mean, we still import raw materials, plants and machinery, even spares. So here we are, we just have to, take that bold step. And Nigeria has to lead. Nigeria has to lead. Like we say in Standard Bank, we say Africa is our home. We drive our growth. How do we drive this growth? Afca is here to drive the growth for us. I mean, we have seen corporates like Dangote. They just started exporting clinker to Ghana years back. Today, Dangote operates in 10 African countries. we have to lead. Nigeria has to lead. Again, I will reiterate that Africa is our home, we drive our growth. That is our mantra in Standard Bank. And it's the only way to drive this growth is for Africans to patronize Africa. It's for Africans to invest in Africa. And it's for Africans to buy made in Africa. I mean, when Yumiwa was talking about, was it Muyiwa? He was talking about the quality of the goods that we produce in Nigeria. Nobody is talking about sophisticated goods here. What you think is inferior in Nigeria could be, you know, a high quality goods across the border. So we just have to take the lead as Nigerians. So I would say again, that Afta is here to grow Africa. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ajibode. And we'll now go into the questions and answer session. And I'd like to start with one question that's been troubling me since Afca finally got signed. If you remember, Nigeria and South Africa were the last to sign. And in fact, they had to be, in a sense, cajoled into eventually signing. And commentators had already said that without Nigeria and without South Africa, there will be no sense in Afca, because in a sense, South Africa would provide not only the required capital to give to entrepreneurs, it also has the technological basis for driving growth across Africa and a large experienced manufacturing base, from mining to fast-moving consumer goods and what have you. While Nigeria has a very large market. Of course, the Nigerian market also has relatively low purchasing power. So my question to Jesuseun is, how do we begin to create the conditions in Nigeria that leads to Nigeria being truly the watershed, the market for Afca, the market that attracts not only economic unions across West Africa? In other words, instead of an Ecowas or an East African Commission, can we begin to see a sub-Saharan coalition of economic zones where you can then have larger markets, and we begin to look at the purchasing power of that market relative to the kind of goods and services that the manufacturing powerhouse from Southern Africa can begin to push into the rest of Africa as a lever to competing with the rest of the world. Just to show your thoughts.
Yeah, sure, and thanks for that. I suppose maybe two key points. One is the idea behind Afta is to leverage the existing regional economic communities. So we have on our side, we have the Ecowas, for instance. Down south, we have the SADC. We have the East Africa Economic Union. So these blocks have existed for a while, and we know Ecowas has been around for 30 odd years now. The Ecowas trade liberalization scheme, which was some form of a trade agreement within the Ecowas sub-region, was introduced to facilitate trade within that corridor. I think I would say the jury is out. My views are that I'm not sure it's delivered to its potential. That's how I'll put it. I think we could have done a lot more. Case in point, the border closure that was extensive clearly highlights the challenges within that space. But the good thing is Afta provides a more overall framework where the individual economic or regional economic communities can begin. And a good example specific for Afta is in terms of the schedule of tariffs or rules of origin. Economic regions are negotiating as a block. Ecowas is saying, okay, let's have, as a block, have a conversation and submit a tariff for the sub-region, as it were. Let's align across the 15 countries to say what represents exclusive, what represents non-sensitive, what represents sensitive, and let's see how we have a common view. So I think if there's anything, Afta would enhance, amplify, or accelerate some of the hopes and aspirations that were, birthed when some of the regional economic communities were created. that's one. The second part, and I didn't really get to speak about the, some of the challenges, but clearly we need to deal with some basic issues around competitiveness. A lot of work has been done over the last couple of years in terms of the ease of doing business. So they had the Presidential Task Force for the ease of doing business, eliminating some of those barriers. I think there's a lot more room to do more. So while progress has been achieved, I think there's headroom to do more in that regard. Second part is about the perception around corruption. That, well, whether it's a reality or perception, like again, people say perception is the same as reality. I think that needs to be improved on. Then the infrastructural piece, which Funsho spoke to. And again, as an organization that has a strong legacy or say legitimacy in investment banking, we've partnered with, investors across the continent to fund, to advise on investment banking or infrastructural projects across the continent. We need to fix that. The delay of getting goods, export goods, because again, when Bola says buy Nigeria, my view of buying Nigeria is really more of sell Nigeria to the world. So you're not saying Nigerians just buy Nigeria. You're saying Africa buy Nigeria. And to enable that, we need to have an efficient port, system that allows me to get my goods from the manufacturing plant to Apapa port and off to wherever on Africa, or by road in a period that is reasonable, that saves me cost and time. So the challenges need to be overcome. But I often say that there is no human endeavor, even going to space or going to the moon. People go to space today as if it's lunchtime. It was at some point, it was something that, you had to plan decades for. There's no human adventure or human achievement that wasn't faced with challenges. But as human beings, and more in particular as Nigerians, resilient, hungry, driven, I think we can, when we put our hearts to it, we can achieve it. I guess the last point on the political will, I would say, is while there was a lot of political will prior to COVID, I think the good news is still that there is political will, because in spite of COVID, all countries still remain committed, because there is a window for you to exit the agreement. But the good news is all countries that signed off still remain committed, and Nigeria is committed. As a matter of fact, this year alone, I know the Nigeria, I've forgotten their full name now, the body set up by the Presidential Committee to drive Afcta has gone on several road shows. The central bank has engaged banking partners to begin to say, how do we partner this growth or this opportunity? So the will is there, and I think, it's progress. The progress is slow, but I think progress is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those very clear explanations. I did keep and reserve one question for Muyiwa. So Muyiwa, I don't think I forgot about you entirely. And it's a very important question, because we have been talking about a monetary union across Ecowas for quite a bit of time now. And I wonder, given your background also in research and also looking at the future of markets, do you really see a potential for a monetary union, either on the ECOWAS level or on the African level, as we begin to implement Afca? We know what happened in the case of the European Union. Their union ultimately led to the creation of a monetary union and the introduction of a European currency. Is that on the cards for Africa?
I know the Western, the ECO, it still seems to be under consideration, and there are clearly discussions around that. Even though from the Nigerian leg, there's still some apprehension, and you can understand why. Because whilst you're having a monetary union, there's still that fiscal union challenge. And I suppose if you look at the euro and the euro area, that's the challenge you continue to see, where there are stronger countries seem to be subsidizing the seemingly weaker nations. And I suppose it's lessons from those challenges that one seems to be looking at from that angle. And then I suppose within the African context as well, there are examples of a monetary union that seems to be working. So if you look at the Francophone West African countries, they have the CFA that's linked to the euro currently. And suppose depending on how you want to look at it, you might say that there's clearly some monetary stability from that standpoint. But suppose from a country's perspective, there's still that independence that one would argue that countries will want from a monetary standpoint. So when you are having pressures, you would rather, in some cases, maybe ease and devalue your currency to deal with some of those issues and not having to take some more difficult fiscal positions or make some difficult fiscal decisions. And I suppose that's why we're still having this debate. And it seems for the Africa Union, it might come through, but I suppose it still depends on how the euro comes out. So if it's seen as a more positive and a successful project, then you could see further adoption from there as we start from this trade union conversation.
Thank you very much. And I turn now to the Q&A box. And the first comment I see here is from Marilu Okoko. Are there some updated timelines on the implementation plan, particularly on phase 2, 3, and e-commerce? That's to Jesuseun. So if you take note of that question, Jesuseun, are there updated timelines available now? And Mr. Adedamola Adigbite also has a question to Jesuseun. One, what are the opportunities in Afta for an SME that engages in transportation and palm kernel processing, putting in mind that most African countries produce similar products and the possibility of bigger companies entering into the Nigerian market? His second question is, how can I leverage on the Afta to expand? I'll let Jesuseun answer those first three questions before we move on.
Yeah, thank you. So on the first question, in terms of updated timelines, yes, the timelines for moved out by like a year. Phase 2 is ongoing in terms of the negotiation. Phase 3 hasn't happened at all, hasn't started. It's again, there is the Nigerian task force on the implementation of NAFTA. I'll share their website, where you can also get those regular updates in terms of the timeline. But yes, there are updated timelines. I should warn, however, some of the updated timelines, for instance, the schedule of tariffs or rule of origin, have also moved out. So again, some of these timelines are almost moving targets. And why that is important is maybe the approach to signing the agreement itself is also what has created this reality. So there was a lot of enthusiasm such that the agreement was signed before the negotiation of the protocols happened. So typically what you have happen is you negotiate the protocols, you have the negotiations, you agree the negotiations, then after that, the agreement is signed. But clearly there was a need to either front load the process. You know, there was a lot of enthusiasm, and of course, there was a lot of political will at the time. And there was a view that let's sign the agreement, then subsequent to that, negotiations would happen. And again, as we well know, in negotiations, it's often always takes a bit of, give and take and time. But yes, there are updated timelines. In terms of opportunities for palm producing and transportation, I think that has been kind of covered in some of the comments provided, but I'd say, I don't know whether the transportation is really you running a haulage business or haulage company and you want to move goods from one country to another, Nigeria, for instance, to Benin Republic or Ghana. The opportunity just becomes a lot bigger. Today, the hurdles or the burdens of getting your goods by road oftentimes they tell you it's a lot better to see how you ship it over to Ghana than to go by road to Ghana. The hurdle in the implementation of Afta, eliminating tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers in particular, road network becomes improved. Rail becomes an option. Investment in rail, and that's happening across the continent already, but bigger investment in rail becomes an option. In terms of palm, your production of palm oil, I would piggyback on what Bola said. And I think Funshi also made that point. Market research is extremely important. Today, you're playing in the Nigerian market, and you see your market as Nigeria. With Afta, the thinking is really, I see my market as Africa. Which markets can I also compete in? Either in terms of the quality of my products today and how it meets the need in that market, or the cost of my products today and how it's competitive in that market. So there's a lot of, and we do have, if I think I'm not sure whether that was the point you made, Mr. Jibola, but you mentioned that he's an SME, but we do have a dedicated team of experts who offer SME guidance, advice, and we even put them through our SME clinics, where we partner with the Lagos Business School, we partner with the Faith Foundation, where we take them through a classroom journey around how they identify opportunities, how they grow their market, how they enter new markets. And we will be happy to have that conversation. I'm sure one of my colleagues will talk about how you can contact us, but we would be happy to take this conversation further in that regard, giving you concrete and pragmatic steps you can take to either expand your business or improve your competitiveness domestically.
Thank you so much, Jesuseun. There's a question I would have liked to put to Demola, since he's here with us, but I think given that he's not listed as a panelist, he may dodge this bullet, but if he wants to take it, he's welcome to also say a few words. But in the meantime, I will direct it to Mrs. Ajibode, which is from Walia Isiaka, who asks a question: what is Stanbic IBTC's plan to provide a solutions or platform like the Africa-China banking proposition to facilitate trade for clients when dealing with various African countries? I believe this will be an excellent value add to Nigerian businesses and position Stanbic as a partner of choice regarding the Afca opportunities. So I'll ask Mrs. Ajibode to start with the answer, and if any of your colleagues would like to chime in after you, they're welcome to do so, please.
Thank you. Let me say that we're already doing that. We have a very strong trade desk. And from the presentation of Seun today, you all know that we are the master of the game. And because Africa is our home, I mean, we have our footprints across Africa. So when you want to look at your trade within Africa, there's the bank to go is Stanbic IBTC, because we own Africa. So we have a dedicated desk for trade, and all you just need to do is to, call on any of our trade experts. They will handhold you through the process, and they will take you to any region you want to go in Africa. We have done that for a couple of our clients who now operate out, I don't want to mention them, who now operate as a Nigerian corporate and now regional corporates in Kenya, Tanzania. I mean, you know where we have our footprints. So anytime you are ready, please call on us. We will handhold you through the process. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other takers or before I move on to the next one? So I'm moving to the chat box now, and there are a couple of comments here. Israel is not an African country and will not be allowed to join AU. Well, I think we'll leave that to Ambassador Daki Africa and his colleagues at the negotiation table. It's probably beyond our ken as business people. The moderator informed that Israel and Morocco are warming up to join the African Trade Group. Morocco is understandable being an African nation. Israel, I think, is the same kind of question. We can't really speak to Israel's motivations, only that they expressed interest. And like you know, Israel always had an observer status with the OAU before that was suspended after the raid on Entebbe. So I think this is their way of trying to come back into Africa. Then from Ambassador Africa, with the Afca, the dreams of Africa's founding fathers is coming to fruition. It responds to the aspiration of Agenda 2063, the Africa that we want. The key to African unity is the Afca, which is also the pathway to realizing all the aspirations of Agenda 2063. We must improve on implementation. Africa does not have an impressive record of implementation. Thank you very much, Ambassador Daki Africa, for that comment. And from Maro Elias comes a question to Jesuseun. What are the opportunities for Nigerian fintech and payment companies in the Afca agreement? Jesuseun, would you please answer that question? The opportunities for Nigerian fintechs. I know there are quite a number of Nigerian fintechs already operating across Africa, but I'm sure you'll be able to speak better to this.
Yeah, I think Flutterwave is the best example of that, the true unicorn that we've created on the continent. I think the opportunity is massive. And in my conclusion, I kind of talked about the opportunity in digitization. The ability, CBN is launching the e-Naira on the 1st of October. The opportunity to transit from a paper document, physical document, process to a digital electronic, which is where the fintechs play, is massive. Today, you do KYCs on a paper-based or due diligence on a paper-based basis or paper-based form. There are fintechs today that provide digital KYC or due diligence. That the time today to access credit is accelerated by 3 weeks, because before you would have to send in papers, they have to review, they have to check. But now there's a database, there's a platform, AfCFTA is driving this, a platform you can go and do due diligence, do KYC on the counterparty. So it's massive. The second point is around what Muyiwa talked about, services. The view is that there are 5 priority services now, and I didn't get to speak to that clearly. 30 minutes is such a short time. There are 5 priority services. It talks about financial services. It talks about communication, tourism. I think there's hospitality, professional services, and transport. The fintechs can play in professional services. They can play in financial services, depending on what they do, and enable payments across multiple geographies. Today, within the Afta agenda, there is what the AfCFTA is championing, supported by the AU, which is the PAPS, Pan-Africa Payment and Settlement System. The idea with that is the burden of foreign currency or foreign exchange is eliminated. If I want to buy from Ghana, I pay in Naira, and I don't have to worry about dollars. I don't have to worry about CDs. If a Ghanaian wants to buy from Nigeria, he pays in CDs. The exchange, the settlement happens via the PAPS system. Yes, they're piloting at the moment. It hasn't come to the market. But that's also a fintech initiative. Yeah, not necessarily run by a fintech, but it's a fintech thinking to say that how can we collapse the burden and the cost of transferring funds to Europe, waiting for it to come back to Nigeria or come back to Ghana for the guy to receive payment. An average transaction cost is somewhere between $120 to $200 on a simple payment for trade. That's eliminated with PAPS. So I think the opportunity is huge, it's massive. And I think fintechs today are playing in that space. And if there's anything we've learned from COVID, I think that's the new, or that's the step change happening in terms of the new direction of opportunity and growth, even for the country.
Oh, I'm so glad I allowed you to answer that question and I didn't try it myself, because you've taken us to the classroom there. And you are so correct. So many Nigerian fintech companies are taking stands in Africa, in the InterSwitch group, for example, another great example. And there's so many of them. And so the stage is set. The central bank has adopted a very open system towards encouraging fintechs to get embedded in the financial services sector. And that proves that could potentially be the differentiator that pushes our fintech agenda, not only in Nigeria, but across Africa. I'll go to the next question, see if there's another question in the chat room. I think we're probably coming to the end of these questions now. None on this page, and on this other page. Mr. Oluwasomi, Ayoade Oluwasomi asks a question. Isn't it true that Afca cannot really progress without the elimination of tariffs? I will address that to Muyiwa. And then Andre Muzerie asks the question, how do you see ESG being an opportunity for Africa? I'm very glad this question was asked because ESG is massive and it's a very big topic, agenda topic at the moment. So how do you see ESG being an opportunity for Africa? Toluwa Logo Oshinobi asks a question of Jesuseun. Considering the lessons from the successes and difficulties of prior existing economic blocs in Africa, such as Ecowas, what do you believe are the potential banana peels that may impact the successful implementation of the Afca? And how can this be proactively addressed? And the last question from Mr. Adekoya Adewale, are there any hopes for infrastructural developments in the nearest future? This appears to be one of the biggest challenges in implementing Afca. How is the confidence of investors being boosted in this area? So I'll let Muyiwa go first with the question on elimination of tariffs, and then I'll let Jesuseun answer the other questions. Muyiwa, please.
Yeah, I suppose the way Afta has been set up, there's already a phased approach to that. And I suppose it's important, particularly when you understand or when you try to prevent indirect or countries taking advantage of the Afta agreement, even if they are not originally manufacturing countries. And so understanding that phased approach and giving countries time to prepare for that, I would say is important. So not necessarily eliminating tariffs by itself, but giving concessions and understanding the process, in my view, is more important for Afta to be successful. Because if you take off tariffs all by itself and not look at all these likely challenges and loopholes that could be taken advantage of, you don't necessarily drive and derive the progress one should see ideally from the Afta agreement, because the main focus is to promote and improve prosperity on the continent, and that should be the focus and expectations from that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Jesuseun, would you please take the other questions?
Sure. So what I would do is I'll take the question on banana peels. I would have Funsho take the question, has spoken the least. I'll have him take the question on ESG and on the investment in infrastructure. I think he's more adequately competent, given that what he lives and breathes. In terms of banana peels, I think there are two areas I always consider. I guess the first is political will. And the biggest challenge we've seen within the Ecowas sub-region is either the political will to commit to some of the agreements or to honor some of those undertakings. And the biggest fear we had going into 2020 and with COVID was the fact that it would highlight the vulnerabilities in most economies and how government revenue is significantly dependent on these tariffs and how much of that would member states want to roll back in terms of their commitments. And so that's one area. My gauge or my measure of political will has always been that in spite of COVID, all countries that signed on still committed to Afta, which is a good sign in itself. Yeah, the implementation phase, which is the second part, negotiation is always important. And even though it's being delayed or it's taking a bit more time, because officially trading started on the 1st of January, even though trade hasn't happened under the agreement, because the fundamentals to enable trade haven't happened. But the fact that negotiation is happening and that process is, rolling over and happening allows for some degree of hope to say people are in a rush to negotiate, to force a signing, then after signing, realizing that, I signed the wrong thing or I got into the wrong deal. But there's an opportunity. We've given, for lack of a better phrase, approval in principle to go ahead. We are committed to this. Now go and sort out the fine details. And that fine details process, I think, is actually a learning, which I think would serve us better, and a learning from previous agreements where we're rushed to renegotiate, then sign, and after signing, realizing the implementation becomes a challenge. So I'll parry the ESG question, Funsho, to you, and what we have done, and I think you can tell that story better than anyone, what we have done around supporting infrastructural development across the continent.
Yeah, so I think maybe let me take the infrastructural development. I mean, at Stanbic IBTC, we've just floated an infrastructure fund which was in the market raising some capital. And what you would see is, you talked about the importance of infrastructure. I think as the market opens up and, there is a free flow of goods across borders, there will be it will be commercially viable for private entities, such as infrastructure funds, etc., to fund the development of critical infrastructure that allows for a free flow of goods. So I think you will continue to see quite a bit of that on a commercially viable basis, which then provides the bedrock for sustainable, development, and it will be across countries. On ESG, look, it's a simple example would be your compressed natural gas or CNG, for example, as people race to achieve net zero. Having the opportunity to reduce gas flaring, move green gas from Nigeria to other African countries, because those markets are open and their tariffs have been eliminated, etc. Transport infrastructure is available. It means that then you could quite very quickly see many of our, and Nigeria is there's a huge amount of gas or gas reserves. So you could very quickly see many of the oil and gas companies get to net zero because they're able to capitalize on the gas opportunity, monetize that, and distribute to other African countries. So another example could be solar, for example. I mean, nothing stops you now from developing your solar plant in Nigeria and exporting some of that power to other African countries because the trade barriers or tariff barriers have been lifted. So I think there are many, and I can talk on for the next hour on that, but obviously many opportunities that this presents for helping companies get to net zero.
Mr. Jibola, I hope you don't mind if I just maybe add something to it.
Please go ahead.
Yes, your question. I think particularly when you look at investment opportunities as well and investment appetite, that seems to be building up considerably from the ESG point of view. And I think increasingly, even African companies as well are positioning for that opportunity. So there seems to be stronger focus on sustainability. And so beyond the energy question and energy transition question, you are seeing companies focus more on sustainability, from gender equality and so on, to thinking about adding more value to the community as well. And so that opportunity seems to be coming up more and more. And you are seeing it from a foreign portfolio flow attraction as well.
Thank you very much to you, Muyiwa, and to Jesuseun. Thank you very much, Funsho and Bolatito. It's been a very interactive morning. Many participants have sent me direct messages indicating how pleased that they were able to participate in this session. The learnings have been tremendous. You've opened our eyes to so many opportunities that are latent. Some of us are already aware of those opportunities, but for those of us who were previously thinking the time is not now, we're beginning to see that the time is not only now, it's almost becoming yesterday. So we got to get the first mover advantage going by getting involved at this stage. So I'll thank you very much for your time and for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I would like at this stage to invite my friend and brother, Olu Delano, to handle the sales aspect of this conversation. Since you are in theory paying for breakfast, even though your delivery van has not quite arrived at my doorstep this morning, I think it's only fair that we allow you to also have a few minutes to tell us what you'd like to do for us as businesses and individuals. Mr. Delano, can you please be upgraded to a panelist and activated, please?
He's already a panelist. Yeah.
So, Mr. Delano, the floor is yours. Mr. Delano is the head of client coverage at Stanbic IBTC Bank, a very experienced gentleman.
Thank you. Good morning, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for the time. I'm trying to put on my video, but it doesn't seem to be coming on, but that's fine. So we are part of Standard
You
Bank.
can use their video. You can use their video. You're already a co-host. You can use their video.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to put it on now. Well, let's carry on. Let's carry on. Technology tends to be one of these. So thank you for everyone. Stanbic IBTC, we're part of Standard Bank Group. Within Nigeria, we've been in operation now for over 30 years. And we are an end-to-end financial, there you go. We're an end-to-end financial solutions provider. Within Nigeria, we look at client first, and we're structured in the concept of focusing on consumer clients, which are individual customers, business and commercial, which will include some of the folks on the call today, SMEs and commercial banking clients, as well as what we call wholesale, which are the large local corporates and global multinationals. Within the country, we are leading end-to-end, as I said, and we have 6 areas that we pride ourselves as we're number 1 in the country. One is the division that Funsho Akere leads, investment banking. Funsho just did a transaction last week, I believe, which was the longest bond, infrastructure bond for a port in Lagos Free Zone. For 20 years. So those are the kind of opportunities that Funsho and the team will lead. We're number 1 in global market, which is the foreign exchange, except after central bank. Custody business, we are number 1 also in the country. Stock brokers, which is the 4th number 1 position. Pensions and asset management will be the 5th and the 6th. We are a publicly listed company, majority owned by Standard Bank. Standard Bank is on 20 countries, and we are plugged in fully into all the locations. So just as Bola mentioned, we take our customers not just from Nigeria to West Africa, but more or less to the Africa regions. Interestingly enough, Standard Bank is also 20% owned by the largest largest bank in the world, ICBC Bank in China. So we're also plugged into, so from Nigeria to Africa regions, 20 countries, and right through to China. Interestingly enough as well, we have 5 operating companies or 5 locations, offices across key centers around the world, starting from the East, China, then we come to Dubai, Europe, we have an office in London, New York, and Brazil. And through those locations, you are practically covered. The approach that we take, we have 6 core sectors that we focus in terms of sector insights. One is consumer clients, which will be agribusiness, consumer packaged goods, and FMCG. We focus on conglomerates and industrials. That sector is where Bola Ajibode leads. There's oil and gas, power and infrastructure, financial institutions, telecom, media and technology, and telecom, media and technology, as well as power and infrastructure. So I think I've covered the 6. And really, that's the system. Now, the client really is the reason why we're here. And I've said we are consumer and HNI, business and commercial, and we really just engage our customers in a very simple way. One, to be relevant. We want to be relevant to our customers on their day-to-day business, which will be collection, payments, and trade with working capital facility. And the rest in terms of strategics, the second one is relevant strategically. Which is thinking about what should they be thinking about. So ESG, sustainability finance, more longer term aspiration. We spend the time dreaming for them or dreaming with them and kind of just sharing with them what should they be thinking about in terms of both Nigeria as well as Africa regions. So we thank you for the opportunity. Please, you have all our contacts, and Mr. Ejiofor can please reach out to us if there's anyone who needs to speak to us. We don't wear ties. We are very casual. We're on the streets. We're ready to we roll up our sleeves and do the work, and just really bring insights and thought leadership to our customers. Africa Considered Free Trade is a great opportunity to really expand and expand into Africa regions. We are already doing that with a lot of our clients right now. And this hopefully will kind of just accelerate that. But please reach out anytime. We're happy to engage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Olu. And indeed, it's been a really bright morning shared with us by courtesy of Stanbic. I'm also glad to add to Olu's sales pitch by reminding everyone that Stanbic IBTC is a proud member of this chamber. Not only a member, they are a sponsor of so many of our activities, and their CEO, Demola, is proud to be a member of the board of directors of the chamber. So you can reach Stanbic through us. Mrs. Ajibode is a constant attendee at our executive management meetings, and she's also someone that can easily be reached. So please reach out to Ike Jimofor, reach out to Bola Tito Ajibode, and through her, get the contacts for Oludelano, Funsho Akere, Muyiwa Oni, Jesuseun, and all the other great and fantastic people at Stanbic who are ready to support you in your business needs. Thank you very much. At this stage, Jesuseun was talking about digital and businesses having to go digital to take advantage of Afca. Well, the chamber itself is also going digital. And we have spent a bit of money and time. Money concerns me, even though I'm not a Jebu. I'm very concerned about spending money. But the CEO has spent quite a bit of our money on a new website. And so I'll be inviting Mr. Ebuka Ume Zeoke, who is the CEO of CED Technologies, to talk to members about the new NSACC website, which the chairman of the chamber, Osayaba Giwa Osage SAN, will then have the pleasure of commissioning. Ebuka?
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's been good afternoon. It's been a very insightful day already. Big thanks to Stanbic IBTC for the wonderful insights in this Afcta going on right now. I've been very, very much educated this morning. I have made a new friend already, but he doesn't know, Jesuseun. I'm going to be reaching out to ask so many questions very, very soon. Hope you will indulge me. I took quite a couple of notes, starting with the, the border tariff being taken out. I think that's very important to encourage trade between African countries going forward. It will improve in terms of employability, taking away poverty. I also made notes on what Funsho said, increasing trade, and what Mrs. Ajibode said in terms of quality of buying Nigeria. That thing struck me. It's very important. You'll find out that people actually create things here in Nigeria as entrepreneurs, which we are, and we put them out there. But because it's coming from Nigeria, people tend to undermine it. So that made me think about trade integrity, which is something I didn't really hear throughout this conversation. Trade integrity. We need to have a body that says, okay, look at these are Nigerian products made by Nigeria, and this is the integrity of this product. Clarity, pricing, and equivalently. That takes me forward
without meaning to interrupt you, but you're actually on the clock here. So our members will
I'm
be
aware.
leaving in another few minutes.
Exactly.
So we need to talk about the website very quickly.
So going straight, without further ado, going straight into it, I'll start by stating the problem statements, the solution, and the results of what we have actually achieved with the new NSACC website. So we understand that we had a trove of information which was inadequate to users and members as well. And we had to spotlight three things which we came about. Starting with data and metadata on becoming a member, to the membership sign up, and to the membership directory. We also looked at the advert side, which will enable the chambers to generate revenue via other member chambers trying to post on adverts. They can generate revenue in this actual form, and then security. Going on to the solution on how we came about the new and what we did to implement the new office. The part of landing on the main website page takes you directly into the membership sign-up form, which actually avoids you from walking into the office as it were before, filling all those documents. Everything has been digitalized. We took an agile approach in making sure that uploads of documents, receiving, and authorization has actually been implemented. In the same space, we actually made the hit point on the landing page for adverts, different modes of adverts that can, for Stanbic wants to share new products, you can actually make that advert done on the NSACC website going through. We also mentioned a few focus points that I would like to actually call out, from aesthetics to membership integration and registration functionality, to insights, to investment opportunities, to resources, adverts, event functionalities linked with Google calendars, SEO, and web security. Going forward, I'll be speaking on 3 key things very shortly. Search engine optimization, which we helped identify and make key phases based on newsletters that are published and shared that we all enjoy from Ike and his team. These are things that actually make the NSACC site top on Google rated and things that you search for to keep on engagement. We also made strong engagement on user interaction and user interface. We are aware that 74% of user interface and user interaction takes place for user engagement. However, after going through with critical UAT 1 on user acceptance test 1, 2, and 3, we got an overall engagement score of 95% for the new NSACC website, which will be launched shortly by the chairman. Finally, we looked at web security. Most organizations pay attention to design, content, aesthetics. Very few pay attention to security. And at SET Technologies, we pride ourselves in making sure that web and mobile application security is the most important to us. Therefore, we have taken strict measures to make sure that the NSACC website has been secured properly. So at this point, I would like to pass it over to you, Mr. Ajibola.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ebuka. I was actually hopeful that you will show us infographics and show us what the website looks like, but I guess
you will get to see when the chairman launches it. Everybody.
Oh, fantastic! So without further ado, I could have skipped you then and gone straight to the chairman because that's what I've been excitedly waiting for. So, chairman, over to you, sir.
Very much.
Osayaba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ajibola. We encourage all our members of the chambers to make good use of this new website. The good features of the website have been clearly stated by Mr. Ebuka and Eme Zioke. And I hereby formally launch the Nigerian South African Chamber of Commerce website today. And I hope that all our members and visitors all over the world will make good use of it. Thank you very much. Technical team, please.
Ebuka project it. Ebuka project it.
So I'm going to share my screen. So this is the new website for the NSACC with over 240 members promoting bilateral trade between Nigeria and South Africa. You have your landing page going on to talk about the introduction. We have the advert section that hits the bull mark. We have where you can ask questions if you have questions, become an NSACC member, which takes you directly into the NSACC form and links to follow us. Also on the website, you have upcoming events where you can view all events. We have the Independence Day just around the corner. So all of this can be added into our calendar. You can see the previous events that can show and export all events into your calendar. However, this is the membership form. Why you need to become an NSACC member. We are over 240 strong members. We have our membership category on category A with turnovers over 100 million, category B for corporate turnover less than 100 million. You can fill a membership application form right here, which is loading. And here you can see the membership directory. You can search for every other member with alphabetical order. This is the membership application form. Instead of walking into the office as we did initially prior to COVID, now we have made it a digitalized place where we can actually all from anywhere in the world log in and fill this form without having to move from our offices.
Awesome.
This is everything, and you can submit. Yes. And
thank you so much,
leverage. Hello? Yes. I will just quickly run over this over 1 more minute to just show on the About Us and investment opportunities like we have all been talking about. There are so many investment opportunities for Nigeria, South Africa. We see investment opportunities for Nigeria and investment opportunities for South Africa as well. So for people that want to travel into Nigeria or travel into South Africa, they're asking, what can I invest in or where can I visit? This is going to help you find good tourist attractions, good places to actually move around to and see different things. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, San, and Mr. Ajibode.
Thank you so much, Ebuka. This is so, I mean, the website looks so alive. It looks so
very interactive.
I mean, I just can't wait to click on the link and just go explore what's there. So thank you so much for this. And the Executive Secretary will be looking to you to keep refreshing the content so that the content doesn't become stale, you know, initial gra-gra. We're looking at it now, everything looks beautiful, you know, but after a few months, we'll get used to it. So you got to keep it fresh for us by giving us new content on a regular basis. And so I'll be looking to Ebuka and the Executive Secretary to please keep it fresh. Congratulations to all the members, to the chairman and all the members of the Nigeria South Africa Chamber of Commerce for achieving this milestone. And we look forward to interacting with the chamber utilizing the website. Thank you very much. At this stage, as we are going towards our wrap up, I'd like to invite the Executive Secretary, Ike Jumofo, to read out a couple of announcements before we do the closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I'd like to encourage our members to visit our website, our new website, and advertise there. I also want to thank especially our members who have paid their subscriptions, and I encourage others to please pay their subscription and clear their arrears. Remember that this our website is a monthly thing. Next month is going to be Philip Consulting, and we're looking forward to it. And I know it's going to be a very successful one. Be part of it, and it's going to be a wonderful thing. I thank you all. The moderator, please take over.
Thank you very much, and on behalf of the chairman of the chamber, Osaya Bagiwa Osage, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and on behalf also of the Executive Secretary, I have the pleasure of thanking you all, and thanking in particular Jesuseun Fatoyinbo, Bolatito, Muyiwa. I hope I didn't miss anyone out, for your profound insights during this session. It's been very informative, very educative, and we couldn't really have had a better exposition on the Afca than that which you have provided. We hope you will be back again to refresh this and to tell us about new goings on in terms of the treaty, especially when it begins to be being implemented. And I thank all the members who dialed in today for this session, and we look forward to seeing you next month when Philips will be sponsoring breakfast. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me talk. Thank you very much, everybody.
Once upon a time, an idea was born. It grew into one institution with a master plan. Since 1989, IBTC has evolved to become Stanbic IBTC, setting the pace as one of the first holding companies in Nigeria. Over the years, we've expanded beyond banking to owning formidable business subsidiaries across 10 industries, all backed up with AAA Fitch rating. From becoming Nigeria's first registered pension fund administrator to being dubbed the best investment bank in Nigeria, the leading wealth manager, and the largest brokerage house in the country. With over 4,000 employees, our presence across the country is further strengthened by our efficient network of digital channels. Our dedication to the Nigerian dream has granted us recognition 44 times by 18 awarding bodies in 6 sectors, igniting possibilities for more Nigerians. And across the seas, we are proud to be champions of exponential trade finance through our partnership with the largest bank in the world, facilitated across 22 sectors. Nigeria is our home, and we are committed to driving her. So whatever your dream is, we believe it can be. Once upon a time, an idea was born. It grew into one institution with a master plan. Since 1989, IBTC has evolved to become Stanbic IBTC, setting the pace as one of the first holding companies in Nigeria. Over the years, we've expanded beyond banking to owning formidable business subsidiaries across 10 industries, backed up with AAA Fitch rating. From becoming Nigeria's first registered pension fund administrator to being dubbed the best investment bank in Nigeria, the leading wealth manager, and the largest brokerage house in the country. With over 4,000 employees, our presence across the country is further strengthened by our efficient network of digital channels. Our dedication to the Nigerian dream has granted us recognition 44 times by 18 awarding bodies in 6 sectors, igniting possibilities for. And across the seas, we are proud to be champions of exponential trade finance the world, facilitated across 22 sectors. Nigeria is our home, and we are committed to driving her growth. So whatever your dream is, we believe it can be. Once upon a time, an idea was born. A institution with a master plan. Since 1989, IBTC has evolved to become Stanbic IBTC, setting the pace as one of the first holding companies in Nigeria. Over the years, we've expanded beyond banking to owning formidable business subsidiaries across 10 industries, all backed up with AAA Fitch rating. From becoming Nigeria's first registered to being dubbed the best investment bank in Nigeria, the leading wealth manager, and the largest brokerage house in the country. With over 4,000 employees, our presence across the country is further strengthened by our efficient network of digital channels. Our dedication to the Nigerian dream has granted us recognition 44 times by 18 awarding bodies in 6 sectors, igniting possibilities for Nigerians. And across the seas, we are proud to be champions of exponential trade finance through our partnership with the largest bank in the world, facilitated across 22 sectors. Nigeria is our home, and we are committed to driving her growth. So whatever your dream is, we believe it can be. Once upon a time, an idea was born. It grew into one institution with a master plan. Since 1989, IBTC has evolved to become Stanbic IBTC, setting the pace as one of the first holding companies in Nigeria. Over the years, we've expanded beyond banking to owning formidable business subsidiaries across 10 industries, all backed up with AAA Fitch rating. From becoming Nigeria's first registered pension fund administrator to being dubbed the best investment bank in Nigeria, the leading wealth manager, and the largest brokerage house in the country. With over 4,000 employees, our presence across the country is further strengthened by our efficient network of digital channels. Our dedication to the Nigerian dream has granted us recognition 44 times by 18 awarding bodies in 6 sectors, igniting possibilities for more Nigerians. And across the seas, we are proud to be champions of exponential trade finance through our partnership with the largest bank in the world, facilitated across 22 sectors. Nigeria is our home, and we are committed to driving her growth. So it can be.